Markwayne Mullin has spent 10 years in the United States Congress from District 2 of Oklahoma, elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022. He's been a successful businessman, a leader of principle, and we appreciate him. We've been in friendship for many years, and he's been to city elders almost from our inception. He's been here many times as a congressman and now as a senator. And he's one of few people. Matter of fact, he may be the only one that I know that would stand up to Sean O'Brien, the Teamsters union boss, in discussions when they were in a committee. And I'm just going to quote you, brother. Can I quote you? Shut your mouth. Now, I'm not sure that you understood what I just said. We're talking about the Teamsters union boss. And Markwayne, my friend, I got to say, if I'd have had my hat on, I'd have taken it off right then. Because there's not anybody else sitting in that committee that would have pointed the finger and say, close your mouth. But you know, sometimes you got to stop the mouth of the lion, right? And so we appreciate Senator Markwayne Mullin. Would you give him a hand as he comes? Yeah. We have a format that we've pre-designed and discussed. He's going to address you for a few minutes. Then we're going to come and talk about some questions that are on your heart and our heart. And then he's going to speak to us devotionally from his heart, from the Word of God. And so, Markwayne, go ahead and address the folks, and then we'll...
Well, I just want to say thank you. And Jesse, thank you for doing this. The first time you and I met, you came to my office and started sharing with me the vision of city elders. And I got it, and started talking about going into our small towns, going into our cities, working on the school boards, working on the city councils, and getting godly people elected office. And a lot of times we forget about our local elections, and we think Washington, D.C. is where it's at. I'm going to disappoint you here, and I know you guys, most of y'all voted for me. I hope. But Washington, D.C. is never going to solve our issues.
That's right.
And if you think Washington, D.C. is going to solve your issues, you're going to be disappointed year after year after year, and then every time you watch Fox News, you're going to get madder and madder and madder, and you're going to say, why can't you all just get it done? We're not going to get it done. But what can get it done is our towns, our cities, and their states that we live in. And that's the way our founding fathers set it up.
Right.
And we have to pay attention to that. We overlook those elections, and we can't overlook them anymore. If we learned anything from COVID, we learned how important our school boards and our city council is. If we learned anything, you should understand that who hires the superintendent is the school board. Who's the superintendent hire? The principals. Who's the principal hire? The teachers. Mm-hmm. If you want like-minded individuals that's going to put God first, you better start at the top. And so I appreciate that. I also have to apologize right now because I walked up to my mom of, she's only been my mom for 46 years. And I said, happy birthday. And she said, thank you. It was yesterday. Dad, your birthday's coming up on the 9th, right? Okay. Happy birthday now, because I'm going to forget. I'm horrible with birthdays. This is what I tell everybody for my birthdays. Don't call me. Don't text me. Just give me a break from my phone. So now everybody, all my brothers and sisters, all do it the day before, just to make fun of me and say, I'm not wishing you happy birthday on your birthday, but happy birthday. But anyways, Mom, Dad, thank you for being here. Dad and Mom, they're 77 and still healthy as a horse, or pretty much for 77. I mean, sorry, but you are. But I appreciate you coming up here. It's a long drive, 90 miles from house, and Dad doesn't get out and drive that much at night. And I actually didn't think he was going to come up here, and he wanted to come up here and see me, so I appreciate it, Dad. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. And then I'll go through my list back here too. Andrew is 18 years old, senior at high school. I know. Birthday's January 15th or July 15th. 2005. Right. Okay. So, anyways, but it's Friday night. What's going on at the high school tonight? And he's here. So I appreciate that. I appreciate him being here. And then I have Lara here, who's a freshman. She's here because her boyfriend's not playing football because he's hurt. And I really don't like him anyway. Tell you what, he's a great kid, but he's dating my daughter, and I don't like him. I just can't. I told him, I said, if I ever see you kiss her in front of me, I'm dragging your face across the asphalt. And that's a true story. I told him that. And he's a good kid. He's big. So you better do it now. So I don't know if I'm able to do it much longer. But she appreciate her being here too. And then Ivy and Lynette came from homecoming. They were painting faces, so that's why they're kind of, you're painting faces. Oh, Lynette was painting faces. And so that's why they came in late and kind of dressed like that, because they came literally straight from the field to here. And appreciate them being there. And then I have my beautiful wife. And, Christy, I mean, I'll have to say it again. Today, her and I were having to get a vehicle. And because the vehicle we bought for her last year, honestly, I've never had a true lemon. And it was truly lemon, like they had to buy it back, right? So we had to get a new one. And I haven't been home on a weekday, and I don't know when. And so yesterday was our day to do it. And we're sitting there, and you know sometimes you can think you're being funny, but you're not being funny? I thought I was being funny, and she didn't think I was being funny. And so, baby, I'm sorry. All right? I've already apologized to her like 6 times. I really did. I thought it was hilarious. But she didn't find it as funny as I did. But she's still here with me, and she's been with me for 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah. If you can believe this, she fell in love with me in 3rd grade, and hasn't let me go since. Actually, we were boyfriend and girlfriend in 3rd grade. I knew I was going to marry her in 8th grade. We got married when I was 19. She was 18, and it's been great for me. If I was her, I would have divorced me. But she's with me, and I sure love her for it. So I just wanted to introduce them because, guys, my family deals with the politics I'm in, right? Have you ever watched a fight? You guys, I mean, both of us used to fight professionally, but have you ever watched a fight and you see somebody get hit and you're like, oh, that hurts, right? Honestly, for a fighter, it doesn't really hurt that bad except the leg kicks. The leg kicks really hurt. Really, really hurt. But getting hit in the face doesn't really hurt. I mean, it may hurt the first time, the second time, but really you're conditioned for it, and your face kind of get used to getting beat in the face. And so, but it does, but your loved ones, it hurts. It hurts them. And because they're on the outside looking in, and they can't do anything. They're helpless because they're not in the fight with you. Well, that's the way my family is. My family sees what happens in politics. They hear what is said in politics. They see it coming at me. They see me having to be in the middle of it, and it hurts them. You understand what I'm saying? My kids, when I do something stupid and say something dumb, or I tell a Teamster boss to shut up, and then he says anywhere, anytime, and I says September 30th, Tulsa, Oklahoma, MMA fight, okay? I did say that, and he didn't answer, but the police called me and said, you need security now. They had to deal with that. You understand? And so they're in the fight too, and so people ask me all the time, and I'm going to turn it back over and start answering questions for you. But people say, how can I pray for you? One thing you need to know, I'm good if they're good. So pray for my wife and kids. right? Oh, and Mom and Dad, because they're here. Dad raised me this way. Oh, I got to introduce one more person. Tim Hammer. Stand up, Tim. Lifelong friend. Twice the size he used to be. But, sorry, I had to say that. No, Tim and I raised together, went to school together, worked a lot of jobs together. Do not talk to him because I'll never get reelected. Remember, it was like 40 years ago, and stories have got really exaggerated since then. Unfortunately, there's some of those stories you can't exaggerate. But I got them on YouTube. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Having to do just a word of admonition, not only for all the gentlemen out there, it's good if you just, when you wake up, the first thing before you get out of the bed, just turn to your wife and say, honey, for anything that happens today, I'm already sorry. Okay? Just start your day out with an apology.
See,
okay?
I don't do that. I look at her and I say, babe, you are so lucky to be married to a handsome guy like me. Yeah. To her reply is, oh yeah, I'm so lucky.
I'm going to try that tomorrow. All right, question number 1. Next year's election, 2024, is it going to be safe without fraud? What is happening on the GOP side to stop the fraud?
So all of us are concerned about election security. I mean, right? We should be. We want to know and trust that our votes are being counted accurately. And then we got to understand that there's rules that we operate by that are different in Oklahoma that's going to be different in every state. You know, every state's going to operate different. If every state operated like Oklahoma, we'd be good. Problem is that we're not. So we have to understand the rules we're playing with. In the 2020 election, we just didn't pay attention to that. We didn't understand the impact that COVID had. We didn't understand what they were going to change, what emergency actions they were going to take, and we learned a lesson from it. If we learned anything, you could learn the lesson in 2022 when the elections went off pretty good. What we did is, instead of just assuming the states was going to police themselves, we didn't make that assumption. We made sure that we had people at every polling place, every place that they were being counted, every election, no matter if it was in California or if it was in Oklahoma, or if it was going to be in Wisconsin, or if it was in Florida, if it was in Texas, if it was in Massachusetts, if it was in Maine, or if it was in Missouri. We had people at every one of the polling places and at every single one of the states where they were counting the ballots at. This time we're going to be doubling the efforts. We have truly an army of attorneys. We're not taking anything for granted. We already understand where things are going to, and the one thing that we haven't done well in GOP is that we didn't really push mail-in ballots. We push same-day voting. And that's why we always win on the day of, and we lose when they're being counted. Mm-hmm. We're changing that. We're making a huge effort to go out and make sure that where they're mailing out ballots, where they're collecting ballots, we have a presence. We're fighting them on their own turf. To show this that we can make it work, for the first time in decades, we flipped seats in California from Democrat to Republic. That was the first time in 20 years, 2 decades, that was able to happen. Now, if we can do it in California, we can do it other places, right? If we can do it in Newsom's backyard, we can do that in Michigan, we can do that in Alabama, we can do that in Georgia, we can do that in Wisconsin. We can make sure that we're in New Hampshire, we can make sure that we have a presence. So I'm very confident. Now, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear election fraud. You're going to hear it all over the place. What we need to do is, before we jump right on that bandwagon, we need to start looking at it deeply. Hey, by the way, if you see it on social media, it's not true all the time. Just throwing it out there for you. But we proved that we could do it in 22, and we're increasing even more for this coming up election, all right?
Great. Secondly, what is going on with the Kevin McCarthy removal, and what do you see going forward as his potential replacement?
That one's personal to me. Kevin is a dear friend of mine, very good friend of mine. understand what the speaker's role is. The speaker doesn't draw the agenda, doesn't put the legislation on the floor. The speaker is to do two things. It's to run the will of the conference and raise money for the party. That's what the speaker does, right? The leader, who is Steve Scalise, makes the floor schedule and runs the floor. The whip runs the votes, works with the committees, with the legislation. The chairman gets the legislations that comes through the rules and comes out, right? That's the role that they play. Regardless of what everybody says to you, regardless of everything else, the speaker has to run the will of the committee. So you can take somebody from, I use this example here since we're in his backyard. Kevin Hearn. We'll use Kevin Hearn for example. Not any play at Kevin Hearn. I'm just throwing him out. You use Kevin Hearn for example, which is really conservative because he represents a very conservative state. Thank God we live in a conservative state. But then you take Mike Lauer, who is New York, who is carrying a Democrat seat, but he's a Republican. Now, a lot of people in here would call him a rhino, but would you rather have a Republican sit in that seat or AOC?
Republican.
No, I'm serious, because that's what your choices are, because he's representing a seat that helps us get the majority. So I get we don't always like the way that he votes, but he's voting his backyard just like Kevin votes his backyard. The speaker's role is to find a consensus between both of them that can be passed in a law so we can try holding Biden accountable. Because if we don't pass laws, we can't hold him accountable. Right? And if you can't pass a budget and you can't pass appropriation bills, now you can pass them out of the House, it's going to be just a message piece. The speaker could do that all day long. Put all types of messaging pieces on the floor and allow you to vote on them, knowing darn good and well there's no way Chuck Schumer is ever going to pick it up on the Senate and let us vote on it. And even if he did let us vote on it, there probably wouldn't pass. And if it did pass, there's no way in the world Biden's going to sign it. And if he doesn't sign it, it comes back to us for a veto override, and we don't have 2/3 majority to override him. So you have an option. You can just have a speaker that's going to just throw out message pieces, which means nothing. Or you can start having pieces that's got a consensus that we don't like because we have to negotiate. But remember, the Speaker of the House is only going to control one leg of a three-legged stool. And he can get something passed. It may not be as much as we would like, but he's got to get something passed and move forward. And now if it was different, you had another Republican leading the House, or leading the Senate, and you had Trump in the White House, totally different bills. You're not talking about the same thing. But if you do nothing and you continue with a continuous resolution, a CR, then what does that mean? You give all the authority to the White House to make the decision on how they're going to spend the money. And government doesn't change whatsoever. So the former Speaker, Speaker McCarthy, was trying to bring budget bills to the floor that could pass, but they kept getting blocked by the rules because people wouldn't pass the rules. And so he got stuck with a CR, and you got somebody that got mad, Matt Gaetz, who had to go with 208 other Democrats to be able to overthrow a Republican speaker, blaming the speaker for working with Democrats. But the speaker never once brought any bill to the floor that wasn't supported by the majority of the majority. That means the majority of the Republicans supported it. Never once did that. But the person that overthrew him worked with 208 Democrats to overthrow him. Now I say all that because the next speaker, if they don't change the rules, is going to be doomed to do the exact same thing. Unless they do nothing but bring message pieces to the floor. And if you bring message pieces to the floor, it does what? Nothing. And there's no accountability and no oversight of the White House. They just run rogue. He runs off executive orders because if Congress doesn't act, then there's no guidance in it, then he runs executive orders and pushes them out. Are you guys tracking me on this? Yeah. So no matter who the next speaker is, they're going to be faced with the exact same thing. And I don't know who that speaker is. I would probably say the person who has the inside track to get there first would probably be Jordan. However, I'm not sure he can get there. Because remember, he has to have 218. So really two people that are running, Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, there's a good chance that neither one of them actually are the one that actually gets there. Now, I hope it is. I really do. I hope either one of them make it. It's fine, because we need to get moving, because without a speaker, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. Now, I heard the guy who overthrew him, I'm not getting on him too much, but Matt Gaetz, I heard him just recently start saying that McHenry could have put us right into session, and we could have went right on and started voting, and we could have been working on oversight and working on appropriation bills. No, because he's just controlling the keys. He doesn't have the authority. He just controls the keys to unlock the building. He cannot do anything else. He's a temporary speaker that's not legally voted in. He's a temporary placeholder. So he can't do that. So they cannot do one single thing in the House until they get a speaker. So we can't continue the oversight of Hunter Biden. We can't continue the impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden. We can't do any of the appropriation bills, so we can't start working on the appropriation bills. And by the way, we got a deadline November 17th, which already means right now 0 chance we make it. There's going to be another continued resolution. 0 chance we can make it. And so we need them to get a speaker elected as fast as they can so we can move on. But I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make that. I hope we can. I hope by Thursday we have one. And I hope it's one of those two, but I'm sure not placing a bet on it. Not that we bet here in church, but friendly wager, like with Tim.
One last question. In light of the fact of the dissolving of the former Soviet Union and a weakened Russia, what is the rationale that's being shared in Washington for why we're spending $223 million every day for the entire duration of the war? What's the rationale, or what's being said in Washington as to why we're underwriting that war?
Yeah, so my dad raised me, and my mom did too, but I'm using my dad. My dad raised me that you're only as good as your word, right? I mean, I don't need a contract when I shake your hand and tell you I'm going to do something. I guarantee you I will do it. Promise you I will. If I'm shaking your hand and I say, yes, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, because we're only as good as our word. That's it. Our word said in a Budapest memorandum, Google it, it's got its own Wikipedia page. The Budapest memorandum of 1994, signed in January of 1994, said that if Ukraine were to give up their nuclear weapons, which they had 4,000 warheads at the time, if they were to give up their nuclear weapons, the United States would stand with them if they were invaded. Specifically said Russia. It didn't have an expiration date on it. That's what it said. I don't know why this isn't in the conversation, because it should be. But guys, we gave our word to a country, and if they had nuclear weapons today, do you think Russia would have invaded them?
Nope.
No. We're obligated. Now, none of us in here signed that memorandum. Did we? Nope. A lot of you guys voted for the people that did. I wasn't 18 then, so it wasn't me. So it's your all's fault. But we still gave our word. Regardless of what was going on, we gave us our word. So we got two choices. We fund them, or we fight Russia ourselves. I'd rather fund them. Now, you guys can disagree with it or not, but we already established we're not as good as our word, and this country's got to have, its word means something. Its word means something. You guys understand? I mean, if you don't do that, then we might as well get away with the Indian treaties that we signed too. We're only as good as our word. So we may not like it, and we can have disagreements with it, but that's where we're at. I'm not saying I love the idea, but it's our word.
Thank you. Great answer. We needed clarification on that. Folks, Markwayne Mullin is going to share his heart with us for just a few moments. Give him a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Now, guys, I'm going to speak to you about something that I probably shouldn't, because I don't know if I'm any good at it or not. But my wife and I were talking before I came over here. Actually, no, it was before I came over here. Before we were trying to figure out what I was going to speak about, and a lot of times I like to speak about David because David is just my favorite person in the Bible, hands down. I relate with him. He made his mistakes. He owned them. He's a fighter. I get it. He loved the Lord, repented, get it. And the Lord still loved him, said he was only after his own heart. It gives me hope because that means I don't have to be perfect for the Lord to love me. Because the Lord knows I have made a lot of mistakes. I've made mistakes today and I'm going to make them tomorrow. But I'm also never understood how the heck I'm supposed to turn the other cheek. It's just not in my DNA. I look forward to riding back in that battle. I want to be in the horse beside him. I want to be carrying the sword, and I want to see the field. I want to see it. I want to be that warrior. I want to be that fighter. And so I relate with David. But a lot of times when I speak, I also speak about my heart too. Something I've had to change. About loving the people, love the call. Many of you guys have heard me say that. And a lot of times I talk about that because I choose my attitude. There's a lot of times we can get angry about politics. We can get mad at someone. I heard someone back here a while ago when I was talking saying baloney. Because we get passionate about it. But the Lord still calls us to love. And so even if you disagree with me, I still love you. I still respect you. And I'm not trying to persuade anybody on anybody's personality. You choose the facts, I choose the facts. I tell you the facts, you can agree with me or not agree with me. It doesn't matter. And I don't take it personal. But so I talk a lot about Philippians 4, not Philippians 4:13, Philippians 4, because I always visit about, in that Philippians 4, we talk about our attitude. You choose your attitude. That's what he says, I can do all things through Christ and who strengthens me, right? And everybody thinks that's a battle cry that we're going to be running towards. But really, all the way through that, he's talking about your attitude. And so that's what I was going to talk about because it's comfortable. But my wife challenges me. And so I'm not. So I'm going to talk about something I'm very uncomfortable about. Because I'm not the expert in it. I'm still experimenting with it. Seriously. It's about raising kids. And I don't know if I've raised good ones or not. Ask them. They'll tell you, Andrew gives me a thumbs up, Lara says no. Okay, great. My other two daughters are sound asleep on the table. So there you go. You see how well I'm doing it? But so my wife and I, we were talking about when we were going down the road, and I just said, she's like, baby, you talk about David all the time, but what about raising a David? About raising a David. And challenged me. I was like, raising David? I don't know if I can speak about that. Because I don't want you guys to think I got this thing figured out. I don't. I've got 4 of my 6 here. One decided to go to State Fair with his girlfriend, and the other one's hunting. So I've got 4 of them here. But I still thought that's true because we should be trying to raise Davids right now. And who was David? Was he just a warrior? He's also a guy that loved the Lord tremendously. But he also made mistakes. If you read about David, he didn't actually have the best kids. Right? But someone raised David. Someone raised him. Jesse did a good job. Right? So how do we do that? Well, I started thinking about, what does it take to actually raise a kid? Money. A lot of it, right? Put that aside. Got to make money. But we must be willing to discipline our kids too. Right? You got to discipline them. And I know that sounds funny, but you do. One thing I was raised by the fear of a belt. Okay? And I deserved them, Dad. I did, right? But I never seen a man that could take the belt off so fast, double it up, and still hit you. I don't know how in the world he done that. I've tried it, and I just can't. But that fear was enough to keep me straight. Right? But the discipline was just. Wasn't overreacted, it was just. So I learned respect from the discipline. Right? So we got to discipline. We don't always discipline. Guys, this is about pastors too. Because you're raising kids, you're the shepherd. We got to discipline people. That doesn't mean you got to discipline them with hatred. You can discipline with love. I guarantee you, every time I've ever disciplined my kids, I love them dearly. And I guarantee you my dad and my mom did the same with me. So it has to be just, but we have to. We got to forgive them. You got to be able to discipline and then move on. Hug them. Don't hold that anger. I'll talk about my kids a little bit here, right? My two beautiful twins that are sitting down there. Guys, I'll tell you right now, I do spank. I have no problem with that. As I got older, I've had to learn new ways to discipline them. But my girls, I've never seen someone like it. My girls, I'm telling you, they're loving kids. They're, truly loving little girls. You just can't see, you can't imagine how loving they are. I can spank them, and I'm still upset, and they'll come and crawl on my lap 2 minutes later and just hug on me. I've had to learn how to forgive more. Now, you take Lara, for instance, when she was a girl, trying to spank her Dale was like a 4-minute ordeal because she's like, no, Daddy, no, Daddy, no, Daddy, no. I'm sorry, Daddy, I'm sorry, Daddy. And then she'd get madder and madder, and she just couldn't bring herself to even bend over for me to be able to bust her butt. And I was like, honey, you got like 2 seconds, so you're going to get 2 instead of 1. And when she'd get mad, and she's mad for like a day. But then I've got to forgive her because I got to go love on her because I know how long it's going to take her to get over it. Andrew, boy, that boy didn't want to ever do anything wrong. And he was the hardest kid I ever had to spank because he was so hard on himself. Because he just had this huge crocodile tear running down his eyes. It's hard to discipline them when they're truly sorry. But sometimes you still got to discipline them. You got to forgive them. Sometimes, though, we don't discipline our kids, meaning ourselves too. It's because you feel guilty because you've done the same thing they've done. Or you may be doing the same thing they're doing. So you feel guilty about it. I'm not going to show a show of hands in here, but we've all experienced that sometime. So you got to forgive them, but you got to forgive yourself too. You got to move on. You got to lead. You got to lead from the front. That means I've got to be willing to put myself out there before I put them out there. That means as a pastor, as a leader of a business, you've got to be the first one there and the last one to leave. If you want your employees to answer their phone call, then you better always answer your call. If you want your employees to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, then your butt better be there at 6:30 in the morning. If you want your employees to be clean when they get to work, then you better be starched when you show up to work. If you want your kids to work hard, then they need to see you working hard. If you want your kids to know how to mow the yard, then you need to be out there mowing it with them. If you want to teach them how to work through hard problems, they need to always see you never give up on a project. You've got to lead from the front. And we don't. A lot of times we try to tell them what to do, and we don't do it ourselves. One thing I always said is schools can teach my kids an education. It's my job to teach them how to work. An education without a work ethic is pointless. You got to have both. We've got to be able to go out and do it ourselves. And this is something that I struggle with. And I just struggled with it. My kids are getting older. It's tough. I want my kids to all be 2 still. I told my wife the other day, honey, I'd have more kids. Neither one of us can. That's taken care of. But I was like, and she's like, are you crazy? we'd be in our mid-50s when they start school. I was like, I don't care. I want them. I miss them. And I'm that guy that I can't even look at pictures because it breaks my heart. I don't want my kids to grow up. I don't. I know what's out there. It's tough. I was talking to my dad just 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I was talking to him about Jim, and the one that's not here. It's with his girlfriend at the State Fair. I'm not bitter about that at all. Just a little bit. But I was like, Dad, how'd you do this? I mean, I was really independent. Really independent. Very independent. Did my own thing, ran hard, and Dad just let me run. Mom let me run too, but I'm sure Mom and Dad had conversations about it. I'm assuming. And I was like, Dad, how'd you do that? He said, if I told you no, would it have done any good? No. He said, I knew you'd always show up. If you had work to do, you was always going to be there. You always had a job. You always was working. You always made your own money. If I had told you to do anything, you're the only one that I knew that would 100% get it done. And if you saw anything else that needed to be done, you'd get it done too. He said, so I had to learn to give you your head. For those that don't understand that, that's horse riding, where you give the horse your head and let him take off running. He said, I had to learn to give you your head. And I sat there for a second. He's like, hey, you got to let him run, Markwayne. He said, you made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. But I knew that if you made a mistake, you'd do one thing. You would correct it. And I always knew you'd learn from it. We got to trust our kids. We got to trust our employees. We got to trust our congregation too, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing with them. If we're communicating clearly with them. And we're explaining to them what we expect out of them. And we're teaching them, we're forgiving them, we're leading from the front, we're doing the things we're supposed to do. We give them their head to let them run. Think about it. What was David doing when he was a little kid? He was taking care of sheep. His dad wasn't watching over him with a slingshot when he was learning how to kill bears and kill lions. His dad trusted him and knew he'd be able to take care of himself, and because his dad let David run, David was able to take down Goliath.
Yeah.
Right? We have to learn how we're raising our kids, how we're raising our employees, and I do mean that, because your employees are watching you, how we're raising our churches, how we're disciplining people. When I talk about 4 keys to success, this is what I raise my kids by. 4 keys to success. I lay out boundaries for them. Andrew, while you're on your phone, not listening to me. What's the 4 keys to success? Oh, my Lord. It's close. Honesty. Well, that's the one you need to remember. We just talked about that. Remember being the man of your word? We literally just spoke about that. Every one of my kids have a plaque that's written on it, signed by me, that says 4 keys to success: honesty, hard work, respectful, responsible. Honesty, hard work, respectful, responsible. Every one of my kids have that written down, literally in stone, with my signature on it. Because I'm trying to communicate to them clearly of what I expect out of them. Guys, we have a full generation that's looking up to us. We haven't got it right, but that doesn't mean that we got to allow them not to get it right. We need to forgive ourselves, move on, and raise David.
Amen.
Thank you for letting me be here. God bless you all.